Have you ever wondered what happens to characters after the book ends? This is what happens to characters after the book ends. You're about to watch me read If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nolan. I'll be updating you periodically with my thoughts as I'm reading the book. So let's go back to right before I read this book. Why am I doing this to myself? I have really high expectations for this book because of how much I love the first one and how much of an emotional wreck that it made me. And like, it's like a rose and it's from Finn's perspective and I don't know if I'm ready for this. And so from my understanding, this book has three perspectives. It has Finn's perspective, Autumn's perspective, and Jack's perspective. And Jack is Finn's best friend. And I think that it does start off with Finn's perspective from the first book. And then I think it goes to what happens after the first book ended and what is Autumn's life like now that Finn is gone. How does it affect Jack, his best friend? How does it affect the mothers? So I think that it's going to be a really tragic, truthful, and raw type of story. And I'm honestly really excited to read it, but I'm also like really scared because it's going to be really sad. I know it. But maybe we can be an optimist here and we can hope that maybe there is a happy ending for Autumn after all. So yeah, without further ado, let's read If Only I Had Told Her. So I just finished Finn's part of the story, which is a little bit more than halfway through the book. The next part is Jack's story and then Autumn's story. So Finn's story, I wish there was more of it. It was exactly what I expected though, which was great because you get Finn's perspective for a lot of things that happen, but mostly towards senior year when he and Autumn start hanging out right up until his death. And so you get like the scenes with him and Sylvie, which is really interesting to like know what did they actually talk about before the accident happened? What was that like? We got a lot of information about this like creep at the grocery store and just like some really good information and insight into the way that he thinks and saw things and the whole like the entire situation. So I thought that that was really good and I really enjoyed that. And I just wish that there was more. I would love to see literally the first book, but just from Finn's perspective. We got some of it, but I want more. The writing is as awesome as I remember. It is like obviously going to be a little bit different because I kind of know what's coming, but now that I'm done Finn's section, it's going to be Jack's section, and that's going to be a complete new story in my opinion because we don't really know much about him. Like we know he's Finn's best friend, and we know that he and Autumn were like chill with each other and that Finn was involved with like their kind of friend group with the cheerleaders and stuff. So I'm excited to learn about Jack's story and his reaction to Finn's death. We know how Autumn reacted, unfortunately. And so I'm really hoping that we'll get, like when we get to Autumn's part at least, that we'll learn more about the after of that. And then Jack's perspective. How does he feel that his best friend is dead? How is the information being spread? How are the mothers taking it? Like, I feel so bad for them. And I want to know like what's going to happen with that. And there's just so many like pieces that are going to start to add up. And I'm also just like, it's just sad having to reread that scene again. I was not ready for it, but you get his actual perspective of like kneeling down on the water and like touching the electricity. They're like, no, Finn. I was like screaming. I was like, please, like in my head, I'm like, please, Finn, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And he had that like impending doom feeling that could be like interpreted as he doesn't want to break up with Sylvie, but like he knows he has to, like he loves her, but he and Autumn, like they're meant to be. And so it could be interpreted that's the feeling he has, or it can be interpreted as his body knows that if he continues going this way, he's going to die. And I was just like, and that's something I really like about this. I love that so many things can be interpreted as another thing, and the foreshadowing and the writing and just everything about it. It was really good, and I'm really sad. Rest in peace, Finny. So I'm now going to be reading Jack's portion of the story, so I will see you when I'm done with his part with my thoughts. I finished Jack's part of the story, and I really liked his perspective and his story, and there was a line in here that I really liked that I'm gonna read to you. So the line is a little bit morbid, but it's honestly, like, I think a really real thing that anyone who has experienced death has kind of thought about, because it's like your brain doesn't want to think about it as a possibility, but then when it happens, you are kind of forced to think about it until eventually your brain just like calms down a bit. And so I really like Jack's perspective as he's trying to process Finn's death, and it's this line in particular. I'm looking around at all these people in the basement, and it's like I'm that boy in the book, except I'm seeing everyone as a future corpse. All these people drinking and milling about. They're simply meat packed around skeletons. The tiniest amount of electricity, just the right amount, runs through each of us, but it will stop someday. We will rot or be burned, but we will be disposed of in some manner. We are all dead bodies that haven't died yet. The apple was always red. The boy just couldn't see it. I take a deep breath and look down at my own chest. I imagine my pink lungs under my white ribs, taking in air, pushing it out, taking it in, pushing it out. I feel my fleshy heart beating, working to deliver oxygen to my lungs, to my blood. I even feel my arteries pulsing, pushing, working. I am alive. I've always been alive, but today I feel it. I take another breath and hold it until my body begs for more, and then I let it out so I can take another. And I just love that. I absolutely love the way that it's written. I love the word choices, the imagery that comes with it, and just how that is something that is real. Every single person, like, we are going to be corpses one day. And I think that in the book, and for Jack's perspective, I think that the way it was put and the way it was just explained and the emotion you can feel from it, I just thought was excellent, well crafted. Another line that I really like at the funeral scene is this: "But it's done. Finn, my friend, is a hole in the earth. For the rest of my life, no matter how long I live, I will always know exactly where he is, because he's never going to move again." And just like the finalization of death and the realization upon living people, I just think that that's also a really well-crafted line from the perspective of someone whose best friend just died. And there are a bunch of other really good lines, but those were the two in particular that really just like stood out and stuck with me. And the entire story of Jack's story is trying to process the fact that anybody can die and that we're not immortal and things can just happen without us expecting it, and it doesn't have to be fair, it doesn't have to be right, it doesn't make any sense, and that's life and that's reality. And him trying to process that and denying it and going through all of these stages of grief, I thought was so awesome as well. And even just the interactions he had with some of his fellow classmates afterwards, and how people were like, kind of like, oh, that's like the guy whose best friend who died, and like people didn't want to associate with him anymore, and he's trying to figure out what is happening. And there's just so much, and I love that it just feels realistic. And I think that seeing his perspective, especially when he goes off to college, is so well done, because nobody knows what he's going through, nobody can see that. But then also like the parallels of like, people don't know what he's going through, but he also has judged other people without knowing what they're going through. And I think that's another really important message that Jack's story has. And I just thought it was so beautiful. So now that we're done with Jack's story, which I thought was really well done, we are now going to be going over to Autumn's story, which is the last story of this book. So I'm hoping that things are a little bit better for her in this book. The way that the last one ended was just so abrupt. Like, I think it was cleverly abrupt. So I am happy that maybe I'll get some closure finally for Autumn's story, because I mean, obviously she's at fault in a way, but Finn is also at fault in a way. And Sylvie, everybody has like they could have done this instead, but I mean, the only real fault that they had is that they loved each other, and that love was cut short. So I feel for Autumn. I do definitely think that Finn should not have cheated on Sylvie. That's like the bad thing that he did, and that's the bad thing that Autumn did. I think that if that didn't happen, I'd be like, oh, like this is even more tragic and stuff. So it's definitely like a tragic love story for sure, but we ain't about cheating in this household. So preparing myself for the final part of this story. I think that's a duology. I don't think that there's any more books, so we'll see how Autumn's story goes. There's so many other characters though whose story I want to know. I want to know Sylvie's story. I want to know the mother's story. And it's just like, I feel like she could just write so many books about other characters' process in this because she does such a good job at it. But we'll see how Autumn's story goes. Maybe there'll be other perspectives from other characters, and maybe I just think that it's just Autumn's story, but I don't know. We'll find out. So I am going to continue to read If I Had Told Her, and I will update you when I finish the book, and I will give you my final thoughts then. Last night I finished If Only I Had Told Her, and I knew it was gonna hurt to read, and it did hurt to read. I really loved being able to read the rest of Autumn's story because it just felt so unfinished for me and so like bittersweet, which I think is really good, but I'm really happy that I finally got some closure on Autumn's story and Jack's story and Finn's story, and really just how the story continues to progress. And I think that there's still more. I want to know about Sylvie's story. I want to know about the mother's story. I want to know about like Alexis's story, because that was kind of interesting as well, that like we know she was friends with Autumn and then she was friends with Finn and them, and then towards the end, like just how the characters change and grow. I think that Alexis has an interesting story and like really good growth that could be coming that I would love to learn more about. And although I like the first book way more than I like this one, I think that it is a really good companion to the other one. I think it's really great to get that closure, see the characters, and like what happens after a story ends. And this book is what happens after. And I think that that's really great because these characters, they feel so real, and I feel like I know them so well, and I love just following them around even if they're not really doing too much. I'm just so addicted to the writing style and just the simplicity of everything and the tragedy, and it's just so beautiful. I'm so happy that I finally read this book, and if you had been with me, these are worth the hype for sure, for sure, for sure. I'm really happy with these books. These are beautiful, excellent, masterpiece. I'm gonna be awarding If Only I Had Told Her a total of 4 stars. I didn't find it as good as the first book, I think because it isn't that level. This is the aftermath. This is like an entire epilogue as a book, which I really love, and I wish that more books had that. And so I don't think that it gripped me the same way, but I did still finish it in less than 24 hours because I could not put it down. So beautiful writing, wonderful story. I love the characters, and I love how different characters are going through grief, trying to understand like what happened, what does death actually mean, how does that affect them, how do they get over this, how do they live with the fact that someone that they love dearly is gone forever, and they can continue to live until one day they also will die. So I thought that it was really good, especially Jack's story. I think that Jack's story was the best look at grief and the realization that you're not gonna live forever. And then Autumn's story is really good for what happens after a tragedy and how do you survive? Literally, how do you survive? And I thought that was good because she creates these like bonds with people, and she's trying and she's having a tough time, but she's so real, and I really respect that. And then Finn's story, we finally just understood like what was that conversation that he and Sylvie had in the car. So we finally connected those missing pieces. I still would love a book fully about Finn's perspective as he was like younger all the way to growing up, because this one we only had a little bit of that, whereas in Autumn's story we had every single like year of high school. So I want to see Finn's side of that. I think that would be really great, but at least we got some Finn content, which was really nice. So the next book that I'm going to be reading is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I'm excited to read this book. I think that it's a beautiful cover. It is a little bit big, which is why I haven't read it yet, because sometimes I'm like, like I want to just read like a little book I can read in a day. But yeah, I'm excited to read this book. I think because it's pretty much fall time. It's pretty much time. This looks very fall-esque, so yeah, it's time to read this book. So if you're interested in watching me read The God of the Woods or any other book that happens to be on my never-ending TBR, definitely hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you love books that make you cry part 2, definitely hit the like button and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!